Imagine walking through a prehistoric forest 6 million years ago. You are starving. Your ribs are showing, your energy is completely gone, and the trees have been picked entirely clean of fresh fruit. Your only option is to look down. There, rotting on the damp forest floor, is a pile of mushy, bruised fruit. It smells sharp, sour, and strange. If any other animal eats this, they will get dizzy, pass out, and likely become lunch for a passing predator. But you are so hungry that you take a bite anyway. Not only do you survive, but you also get a massive burst of life-saving energy. This moment was not a mistake. It was the spark of a genetic superpower that completely changed the course of human history. Today, we think of alcohol as something adults drink at parties or dinners, but the truth is much wilder. Without alcohol, the human race might not even be here today. It didn't just change our weekends, it literally saved our ancestors from extinction, forced us to invent farming, and kept us alive when water was a deadly poison. To understand how this happened, we have to look inside our own bodies. Most animals cannot digest alcohol. To them, it is a dangerous toxin. Millions of years ago, our ape ancestors lived safely up in the trees, eating fresh, perfect fruit. But then, the Earth's climate shifted. The lush forests began to shrink, turning into dry grasslands. Food up in the trees became incredibly scarce, forcing our ancestors down to the ground. Down on the dirt, the only food available was fallen fruit. Once fruit hits the ground, tiny invisible organisms called yeast start eating its sugars, turning them into ethanol, which is pure alcohol. This created a massive survival conflict. The ground was covered in free food, but it was basically poisoned with alcohol. The apes that couldn't handle it got sick or sluggish and were eaten by predators. But then, a random, miracle mutation occurred in one single ancestor's DNA. This mutation created a super enzyme in their liver called ADH4. Suddenly, this one group of apes could digest alcohol 40 times faster than any other creature on Earth. Because of this, they had access to a massive backyard buffet of fermented fruit that no other animal could touch. They survived the famine, passed on their genes, and eventually became us. But our strange relationship with this substance was just getting started. For millions of years, humans were nomadic, meaning they constantly traveled to find food. But about 10,000 years ago, everything suddenly stopped. Humans began settling down in one place, building the very first villages. For a long time, history textbooks told us we did this because we invented agriculture to grow wheat for bread. But modern archaeologists have pointed out a glaring problem with that theory. Making bread back then was an absolute nightmare. It took an exhausting amount of physical labor to harvest, husk, grind, and bake wild grains just to make a dry, bland loaf of bread. It simply wasn't worth the effort for a nomad. So, why did they do it? The answer lies in clay jars found in the ruins of the world's oldest stone temple, Göbekli Tepe. These ancient jars didn't contain flour. They contained traces of chemical compounds found only in beer. Our ancestors didn't settle down to make bread. They settled down because they wanted to throw a massive party. They figured out that if they gathered wild barley, soaked it in water, and let it ferment, they could create a magical, bubbly drink that made everyone feel happy, relaxed, and safe. Gathering to drink beer became the social glue that bonded hostile tribes together, turning strangers into neighbors. To keep the beer flowing, they had to stay in one place and plant fields of grain. Alcohol literally forced us to invent farming and build the very first cities. Yet, settling down in cities created a brand new, terrifying problem. When thousands of people live close together without modern plumbing, they naturally pollute their own environment. Waste leaked into the rivers and wells. Drinking the local water became a game of Russian roulette. A single sip of contaminated water could cause cholera or dysentery, wiping out entire families in days. Once again, humans were trapped in a survival crisis. They needed to drink to survive, but the water was deadly. And once again, alcohol came to the rescue. Ancient people realized that if they drank beer or wine instead of plain water, they didn't get sick. They didn't understand the science behind it yet, but the fermentation process naturally killed off the deadly bacteria swimming in the water. For thousands of years, from ancient Egypt to medieval Europe, beer and watered-down wine were not luxury drinks. They were the primary source of clean, safe hydration. Even young children drank a weak form of beer for breakfast, because it was the only way to ensure they wouldn't die of a waterborne disease before noon. Without this accidental shield, our early cities would have quickly turned into giant graveyards, and the rise of human civilization would have ground to a sudden, tragic halt. It is easy to look at the modern world and see alcohol as a simple, everyday product, or even a dangerous vice. But when you peel back the layers of our past, you find a completely different story written in our bones and our history. We didn't just conquer the planet because we were the smartest or the strongest. We conquered it because we were the only creatures who could turn a rotting, toxic mess on the forest floor into a source of life-saving energy. So, the next time you see a glass of juice left out a little too long, or see adults toast to a celebration, remember that you are looking at a deeply coded time machine. It is a quiet reminder of the day our starving ancestors climbed down from the trees, took a brave bite of a ruined fruit, and accidentally paved the way for the modern world.